Are you journeying through grief and needing a little extra support, inspiration, healing, and guidance? Join me in turning your losses into gains with the Losses Become Gains podcast. Hi, my friend. I'm Tara Accardo, creator of the Losses Become Gains online community, blog, and now podcast. I'm an only child who lost both parents to cancer within 6 months of each other, followed by my sweet fur baby soon after. After all of this, I knew I was meant to do more with what I had been through. And now that means encouraging and coaching grievers just like you. I'm a wife, friend, grieving daughter, writer, course creator, loss advocate turned grief coach, and I'm here to help support you and move you through your grief. I want for you to feel like I am your girlfriend in the grief space and know that whatever you're going through, there's someone out there who just gets it. Few topics are off limits here because grief and loss don't hold back either. We'll get into the nitty-gritty of what all this means for you and your healing journey. We'll dive into countless topics. I will give you all the coping tools and impactful mindset shifts to take you from just surviving to thriving after loss. We'll also touch on some fun lifestyle topics too, because we have big, beautiful, vibrant lives to live. So grab a cup of your favorite beverage, get comfortable, and show up with an open heart and mind. I am so glad you're here. Have you heard about my brand new Losses Become Gains daily journal? I am so proud to announce you can now get your hands on it exclusively on Amazon. But trust me, you don't have to be someone who's grieving or someone who has gone through a loss to use and enjoy this journal. For over a year, I knew I wanted to create a beautiful daily practice in the form of a journal that wouldn't take you a super long time to complete, but will add so much value and perspective to your day, no matter what season of life that you're in. The prompts are specifically designed for people going through loss by someone who has also gone through loss, but it's just general enough for anyone to use and asks the important questions that, at least for grievers, I know for a fact that they need to have in front of them each and every day. It's a daily prompt with a separate page for writing more thoughts if more comes up for you. There are 6 months worth of prompts in this journal, so you can really see your growth and progress right before your eyes. It helps you get to the root of how you're actually doing and what you need to focus on in your healing journey or daily life overall. And it comes in 3 ocean-inspired colors. Like the ocean, I want this journal to empower you to let it flow, allow yourself to really dig deep and go beyond the surface of your grief or whatever hardships are coming your way, and really feel the healing, growth, and evolution that I know you are so capable of. And all in just a matter of minutes per day, that will become a welcome part of your routine, I have no doubt. Type in Losses Become Gains on Amazon and be sure to scroll down to find all 3 colors or click the link in the show notes for details. Pick up your copy of the journal today or as a gift for someone who could use it. Hello and welcome back to the Losses Become Gains podcast. I am your host, Tara Accardo. As always, I am so happy you are here with me today. And with this being wedding season, I wanted to put this episode out into the world in a hopefully timely way because I know there are so many people in this community that are perhaps newly engaged, going through the wedding process currently, or are perhaps very soon about to get married. And I want to first start by acknowledging that weddings can be stressful enough, regardless of whether someone meaningful to you isn't there to witness your special day here in person, whether they have passed away or simply just were not able to make it. Maybe you had a falling out, whatever it is. And I feel like I'm pretty well qualified and equipped to talk about this topic, particularly because last year I went through 2 weddings. We actually had 2 wedding ceremonies without my mom and dad, and a whole bunch of other funky things happened during that process that I'll share with you today. And as a bride who had a lot on her plate during the months of planning, on top of going through all of this without my parents, this process wasn't easy for a variety of reasons. Really, parent related or not. So, your gain from this episode today is to learn how to cope with a loss during a wedding and going through that whole process, and to find ways to make sure that you find your happiness and peace on your big day when I know that can feel very hard to come by at times. So, this topic can get pretty deep and it can hurt a lot, I know. And I also know there are people out there that have literally postponed their weddings or kind of like called it off all together because they just cannot imagine their special day without a particular loved one present. So I really just first want to acknowledge that, but I want to begin this episode with gratitude. And I want you to do the same if you're in similar shoes. I am thankful to have had not one, but two incredible weddings that were chock full of love and support. Both days were beyond what I could have dreamed of, really. And it's something I just want to remind you of if you are going through this, or if you will at some point. Your special day can still be special. Your special day is still yours. And whoever is missing, I promise you, they are seeing every second, especially those that have passed away. Their spirit, they have a way of crashing a party. I know this. I feel this so deeply. And I just want to shout this from the rooftops whenever I can. So please just remember that today. Much of the focus and some of the most difficult people to miss on a wedding day can be like your mom or mother figure, or your dad or father figure. So that will largely be the focus here on this episode, but 100%, a lot of what we talk about today can apply to other loved ones as well. So I just want you to keep that in mind and think about all of this in terms of your own situation. So, starting this conversation with mother figures for a moment, not having your mom or a significant mother figure there, perhaps this was a grandmother for you or a godmother, stepmother, whoever this is, we don't discriminate, leading up to or on one of the most momentous days of your life can be extremely painful and isolating and really very lonely as well. It's excruciating sometimes not having her to bounce ideas off of or vent to when something isn't going right, or maybe your soon to be partner is driving you a little batty. Okay, it happens. Maybe if a vendor is giving you some trouble, or I don't know, like Aunt Carol over in Florida can't decide between chicken and fish. These are all, I laugh, but these are things that can happen. Or some people haven't RSVP'd, whatever this is. Those are things that we often go to these people for, and also just love and support. And you just want to share all of the exciting things with them, right? Or shifting gears a little bit, maybe it's the loss of a father or a brother, an uncle, a grandfather, again, whatever father figure you're missing. Maybe this father figure you're missing is a jokester or just a beautifully sentimental guy. Maybe he would have given a toast or torn up the dance floor. Maybe he would have shed some tears with you. For example, my dad was the absolute best at providing really wise words you didn't even know you needed at just the right time. And he was truly one of the best listeners I've ever met in my life. They really just don't make them like that anymore. Seriously, I was very blessed. And my dad, he didn't just listen, he really heard me and gave really thoughtful insight, which is not always easy for a girl dad. I just want to acknowledge that. And to not have him there leading up to our special day was tremendously difficult. But his absence the day of was so palpable, as was my mom's, right? So as you make your way through the wedding process, number one, please know that I see you. Having gone through our wedding ceremonies and both processes and all the things without mine, I can't tell you how many times I longed for my dad's bear hug, or I wish I could have gone to him for advice or simply an ear to listen. And same thing with my mom. I just wanted her to be there, when I'm trying on my dress, or to just like talk about all of the exciting wedding details and all of this kind of typical girly stuff. And I missed out on all of that. And, my family and friends, a lot of them did acknowledge that vast hole that I felt. And a lot of them felt it too, right? With my parents being absent. Some family and friends didn't really acknowledge it. And sometimes that hurt. But I also had to acknowledge that many people may not want to bring them up out of fear of upsetting me. So just keep that in mind. Of course, this depends on who's around you and just if they're maybe perhaps nervous to bring something up like this to you out of fear of upsetting you. They don't want to remind you. Just remember all of these things as you go through the process. It's not that people are forgetting sometimes, right? But it's beyond a loved one not being there the day of, right? There's so much involved in the planning and the months leading up to it that we can feel this emptiness and loneliness and feeling very lost and, just desperately wanting them there. So, to my brides especially, because I know so much of this process can fall on us, I see you so deeply right now. And so many of us dream about this day for years, and some of us don't, and that's okay. But, for some of us, maybe even over a decade or since we were little girls. And, listen, it's not to say that we can't acknowledge all the guys out there. I want to acknowledge everybody. But really, this episode is for everyone. And all I can say is from the point of view of a bride and as someone who had been envisioning this day for a hot minute, I never saw this day happening without my parents, period. Right? I doubt anybody really does, right? Unless maybe somebody's like already sick by the time that you're even starting to think about a wedding. But personally, I didn't feel the effect of not having my mom and dad there until closer to the big day, or there was maybe some events along the way that stung more than others, right? There were definitely moments in the days in between where it hit me and I was a bit of a wreck or just really sad about my reality. But as the day loomed, I came to realize the gravity of the situation. So if that is something that you're feeling, that is super common. And in this episode today, we're going to talk about this process without our loved ones very holistically, but there are definitely some very specific things in this wedding planning process that I would be remiss if I didn't bring up and address and how to move through that. And first and foremost, got to bring this up. It is the dress. So for me, one of the first times this came about, these feelings of really missing my mom, especially, was not having her there with me to try on dresses. And listen, I'm extremely fortunate to have some best friends that are like sisters that could accompany me. I probably went to like at least 6 or 7 stores, and one way or another, at least one or two of them joined me at each one, and I am so grateful for that. And I can't say this enough, especially if you are a bride without your mom here, lean on your girls or even your guy friends, right? Whoever this is for you. It will make the experience so much more fun, so much more joyful, and quite frankly, it can be a really good distraction from such a really pivotal person missing from your day. I wanted to just quickly share a story about how I chose my dress, but not just to boastfully share this story, but really, I just wanted to work this in because I 1000% feel like I got a sign from my mom of her approval from the spirit world, wherever she is, that she was there and she was watching and she approved of all of this. So, really long story short, I was at a bridal boutique with two of my friends, Sarah and Emma. Shout out to them if they're listening. And Sarah had actually pulled aside a dress that we all thought was beautiful and super special, but I just wasn't sure. It wasn't quite my style. It was a little more, what's the word? Not bohemian, but it was just a bit more like almost like 50s Hollywood in a way. I don't think I'm describing that very well, but I had my heart set on more lace detailing. It was just always what I saw myself in. And I also thought that it would like quote unquote match our venues better because both of ours were like kind of wineries with vineyards. It was sort of rustic. This dress was complete solid beading, but it was stunning. And the back, I mean, I actually have a blog post about this. So if you're at all curious what this dress looked like, please go check that out. It's on my website. But it was just really like nothing I'd ever seen before. And it was so intricate and the design was just so beautiful. Anyway, I was intrigued by it, so I tried it on. I truly almost didn't know what to think about it at the time. It was definitely the silhouette I wanted, and it was very flattering, I must say. It was, I don't think it was like trumpet, but it was like kind of a mix of like mermaid trumpet a little bit. But I really just couldn't get past the detailing and how sort of far it was from what I had envisioned. In other words, I was totally in my own head and I kind of talked myself out of it. And Sarah and Emma, though, they fell in love with it. They felt it was so unique, very avant garde. That is the word I was looking for, and just something a little different. And I felt that way too. I just wasn't sold yet. So, at this moment of contemplation and wondering what my mom would think, right? These are the moments where you're just like, damn, I wish I could just ask. I wish she was sitting here giving her 2 cents if she, just to, we just need that validation sometimes. As I was with every dress, I was constantly thinking what she would think. And all of a sudden in this salon, the song I Don't Want to Miss a Thing by Aerosmith came on. I cannot even explain how much of a diehard Steven Tyler fan my mom was. She loved Aerosmith. We would sing it in the car together. She was constantly listening to them and talking about Steven and Googling him. Like she was so funny. You get it. Even when she, first died and I'd listen to the radio, driving her car because her car just needed to be driven. I didn't want to just let it sit there. There Aerosmith was constantly. And it was 100% something that I take as a sign from her. Now, I didn't walk away with the dress that day because I had 2 more stores to visit. I was really excited about it. I had my eye on sort of another dress. At the very last store, they too had this very avant-garde special dress. It is called the Daxton. It's by Sotero and Midgley. And funny enough, I was with Emma again this time, and when we first walked into this boutique, we were looking through the racks, but it was like one of the first ones that sort of like called my name, and I could not believe I was seeing it again. And Emma, again, was with me. She was like, Tara, you have got to try that on again. It is a sign. And I was beaming at this point because that's just the validation that we need sometimes, There was just something special about it, for sure. You know how always, people always say like the dress will speak to you, don't force it. Like I believe that seriously, like it will. And I put it on once again and felt completely different, yet completely right. And the dress just felt like completely mine. And I hadn't cried yet at a dress appointment, but when this lovely bridal consultant and Emma had stepped out of the room for a moment, it was the first moment that I ever cried to myself during that dress buying process. The emotion overcame me, the despair of not having my mom and dad really there, because I would also have loved for my dad's opinion and just him seeing his little girl, right? Trying on all these dresses and witnessing this in person. I mean, it was gut-wrenching, really. But I just knew this dress was it. And I knew my mom and dad approved and they would love it. And I think that emotion was really just like, it was a lot of things. It was sort of the validation I needed. It was just like, yeah, honey, that's your dress. Like, don't worry about it anymore. Like, you got it. So it was a beautiful process. But, I want to just mention here that a majority of my family, basically all of my family, are on the East Coast of the United States. And so while I have very supportive aunts and people that I can lean on that are like mother figures, they weren't with me during that process. I would maybe message them, but they weren't physically there, And I did go to one appointment with my now mother-in-law, which was lovely and a great bonding experience. But I'm very honest here at Losses Become Gains, and I have a little confession. It truly made me so sad. And it actually stung worse than any other appointment I went to, especially when I got home. It just hit me really, really hard. And I want to say this has nothing to do with how incredible my mother-in-law is. She is seriously the best. She is funny and supportive and super thoughtful. the list goes on. But it actually hurt more than just going with my friends because it wasn't my mom. It was such a one-on-one experience that I felt robbed of with her. And I felt so guilty for feeling this way, you guys. Like, she made all this effort to go with me. We had a great like drive there and back. Like it was great, right? And again, it's not a reflection on her. It's it's simply how I felt. And we have to own that, right? But listen, also I talk about triggers and grief triggers all the time. I discovered a trigger that day, which honestly I see as a good thing because now it's something I'm aware of and it honestly helps with my grief and my healing journey. Here is another important gain. Remember, because this is losses become gains. I shared a beautiful afternoon with my soon to be at that time mother in law. And it's an experience that we'll be able to look back on fondly. Right. And as my quote unquote new family, and certainly having lost my own immediate family, I see so much value in those relationships with my husband's family. And I've struggled with that, to be really honest with you. I have struggled with feeling like I was like replacing them a little bit, or just, it just didn't quite fit with my parents being gone. And honestly, just so many complicated emotions, to be honest. But I just want to remind you here, and this is something I had to remind myself too. It's not to replace what you had, and it will never replace having that experience with your absent loved one, right? That can hurt. It's simply to build on something new and meaningful. And again, this is something I'm still working on, but please consider this if you find yourself in this position too, right? So, another thing I would just be remiss if I didn't mention is what or who to perhaps avoid. I cannot stress this enough, and you might know this, but I'm going to say it anyway. Bringing the right family and friends with you is critical. I honestly, especially if you're like really feeling griefy, I would really recommend avoiding anyone coming to these appointments with you that can negatively trigger you. Anyone that can make you feel lesser than or bring judgment to you or address or your experience without, you're asking for an opinion or they just bring a negative attitude. Avoiding people that somehow end up making it about themselves or what they like, or will be kind of like overly assertive with their opinion and not allow time for you to think and feel, because that needs to happen anyway, regardless of whether or not you've lost somebody, right? As women, like we have so many decisions coming at us. We don't always need people in our ear so assertively trying to be like, oh, that dress is just not for you, or oh my gosh, you have to get that one. What are you thinking? Right? But listen, that sometimes you have to bring that person, right? Or maybe it's like you just have to bring that sister who can be a lot sometimes, and it would start this inner familial world war if you don't, right? I understand that. In that case, just set some expectations. Be honest about what you want to get out of the appointment. Be upfront about wanting a beautiful, relaxing, and fun experience, and that negativity will just not be tolerated. Right? We don't have to say these things in a bossy way, but just like, hey guys, I just want to be real. I'm struggling with this a little bit already. I really just want this to be a really fun, really beautiful day. All right. We all good. We're on the same page. Awesome. Doing this beforehand, doing this in the moment, whenever you feel the need, just I empower you. Don't be afraid to speak up and be thoughtful and strategic with your guest list in these appointments. And again, I say this coping with a loss or not, it's helpful advice. Trust me. Okay, that was a lot about the dress, I know, but I feel like that was all really relevant to say because a lot of really complex emotions can come up during that. But just to switch gears here a little bit, another significant moment of our wedding that I had to accept, but was harder kind of than I thought, was my dad not being able to walk me down the aisle. As with anything in that day, it was never something that I thought I would have to do without him. I always envisioned him being there. He was always going to be the last person that I would share a hug with and a final word of wisdom with getting married to my best friend. But alas, that was not my journey. And While I don't have any siblings, I'm very fortunate enough to have a cousin that I'm very close with. Shout out to Brendan if you're listening to this. And he is like a brother to me. And he was also very close with my parents. So it felt very natural to have him walk me down the aisle if my dad couldn't. But let me tell you, in my heart, that spot was so reserved for my dad. There really wasn't anyone I could envision taking on such a special role other than him. So, if this is something you are going through or struggling with right now, I will just leave you with a couple little pieces of guidance if you're struggling with this. If you have someone in mind, ask them. You know what? You never know. They will probably be so honored that you did, especially honored when, you might have lost this father figure, right? Like this, they're kind of, I don't have a better way of saying this, but they're kind of filling the shoes, right, of someone that is so prominent and significant in your life. It is rarely a job that someone will take lightly. So I think it's a really beautiful gesture if that feels right to you. The other thing I just want to mention is not to force it, right? And also I'm just going to throw this out there. It's okay to walk by yourself. I sat with my options for both weddings that we had. While Brendan felt like a really good fit for our first wedding ceremony, and that didn't really require a lot of like hemming and hawing. For our ceremony in Italy, I can't say I felt the same pull, right? And we were already married at that point too, like legally, officially. Italy was the second one that we had a few months later, and Brendan officiated our second ceremony. So he was also a little preoccupied with that. As lovely as another family member might have been, there was just no one I felt like really close enough to be honest, to take on that extremely special honor better than my dad. And since we were already married, I'll be honest with you, it felt very empowering walking by myself. It wasn't scary. It wasn't sad. And honestly, it wasn't something people thought was strange. And that's just my experience. I don't want to say that people might not find it weird, whatever. I know this is so situational, but if anyone else does in your circle think it's weird, I'm going to be very blunt. Please just ignore it. Compassionate people will understand how sacred that space is, as I was very fortunate that my family did, and that it really can't be filled by just anyone, right? If anything, family and friends were quite honestly praising the choice that I made, and they never questioned it, and they thought it was so beautiful. And even in that ceremony, people came up to me later and were like, "Tara, I felt like we could feel the energy of your parents like with you as you were going down the aisle. It was so beautiful. And the way that the light was hitting, like, oh my God, they were there." Right. And that would have been a different vibe if I had walked with someone else. So I wanted to allow my dad that space to come through. However, it sounds funny, but however his spirit could or wanted to, and to kind of like take that rightful place. And I know that's a little woo woo for some people, but I'm real with you all here. And that's just how I felt. Right. So that's how I feel about the walk down the aisle. That's some advice I have for you. But there's another difficult aspect that we often have to endure without a father figure, usually, or whoever this person would have been for you. And that is the father daughter dance, or again, whoever you would have shared this significant dance with. And maybe there's some guys listening here. Maybe this is a father, or sorry, not father. Maybe this is like a mother son dance or something, right? Whatever the situation is for you. That was especially sad to me because when I was first engaged around the age of 24, that is an entirely separate story. But yes, I did have a called off engagement once upon a time. If you did not know that about me, my dad was so proactive in asking me to do dance lessons back then. I thought it was the sweetest thing. And it was something that, even though we had called off that other engagement, my ex and I, years after that, I always kept that in the back of my head and how cute and excited he was. And it was something that I looked forward to doing with him so much. So it was devastating, honestly, not being able to share that experience with him. And it just made it sting. that much more, to be honest. But that all being said, I am here to share an alternative that I think is so beautiful. And I credit my friend Angela for introducing this one to me. She's one of my best friends, and she was also a bridesmaid. And she also lost her dad back in college. And for her wedding, about 8 months before mine, she had more of a communal dance. So, what do I mean by this? I basically mean that she chose a song that was special to her dad. And once dancing was about to begin, when the father daughter dance would have normally started, she got on the mic to preface the dance and what it was for. And she explained that in lieu of a father daughter dance, she would instead like to invite everyone to the dance floor to kick off the evening with a song that he loved. And she just wanted everyone to get in on the fun, to really, again, kick off the dancing and just feel very surrounded by light and joy and love. It was the most beautiful, happy experience. And though, I never met her dad, unfortunately, I have no doubt that I made him so proud. He would have been so there for it. So I did my own version of this. And for me, I not only wanted a song that would really kind of pump people up, but because I lost both parents, I wanted a song that would honor both of them. And we ended up going with Living on a Prayer. Number one, because my mom was a huge Bon Jovi fan. And number two, I just love the lyrics. It was so indicative of what I was feeling at the time, like, again, we've got to hold on to what we've got. We've got each other, and that's a lot for love. Take my hand, we'll make it, I swear. I mean, it was perfect and spoke to the moment, and it was all I wanted. And all I could have asked for in that moment. So, we might dread these moments, or maybe these are the reasons that we like postpone the weddings, is we just like cannot even envision how to tackle some of these moments without them. But I promise you, like, there are workarounds, there are things that you can do to make your day feel just as special and make yourself feel just as loved. And it would be just as fun in a very different way, right? Like, even also, I just want to point out, like, little things like them not being in family photos. For example, me getting in my dress, I wish they could have witnessed that. Or, again, tearing up the dance floor if her song came on. I could just imagine my mom doing this. And, there were countless times throughout the day where I just had these brief moments of sadness that I couldn't go up to them and give them a huge hug and thank them for giving me, the life that afforded me such a phenomenal day, 2 phenomenal days. So, in moments like that, in sad moments, in moments of overwhelm, I did a few things to help me through it. Number one is to breathe. I talk about breath work a lot here on the podcast. I am a huge advocate for it. Just relax yourself and your mind and take super deep, intentional breaths and allow yourself to feel that emotion in the moment, and do not shy away from it. I know you might have a face full of makeup, so maybe have a hanky handy, right? But inevitably, some tears might come. For me, I totally broke down during our vows as I was talking about my parents. I just let it happen. I did totally have a tear streak afterwards, but honestly, afterwards, my friends and I just laughed. We all fixed the makeup a little bit, and it was all good, right? What are you going to do? Like, and if anything, like, if you find yourself kind of crying a little bit, or it's just so overly emotional, like, just laugh. And that brings me to my next point that I just want to make. Remember to smile. After you get grounded in the moment, just smile. Yes, even if the moment is actively making you sad and feeling that longing of wanting your loved one there, smile. Be grateful for everything and everyone around you. Be thankful for the people that have shown up for you that day and who love you so deeply. And yes, I know it's not the same as having the people that you so desperately want there. It's like one of those things where you could be filled to the brim with a room full of people that love you, but if it's not like the one person that you want there, I know how empty that can feel. but your loved one's support is an extension of everything going on around you. So allow yourself to feel that energy. And if you force a little smile, you are less likely to lose it in a really big way. But listen, if you do lose it in a big way, own it. That's okay. That is grief, right? And again, especially if you're trying to avoid the tears, once again, makeup. If anything, it will probably bring some happy tears and it will enable that gratitude even easier. So, next, I just want to quickly talk about some of the biggest pieces of advice, other than the two that I just mentioned, that I can give you to still find ways to savor and find happiness on your wedding day and in every step leading up to it. And with these steps, I personally was able to find some peace of mind in times of stress or sadness when my grief was really acting up and rearing its ugly head, because it definitely did. Number one, don't feel guilty. Some moments you might be elated and laughing. One moment their absence can hit you really hard. Don't feel guilty for finding happiness that day. You are allowed to laugh. Okay. I had moments where I felt so guilty for finding joy and kind of like getting caught up and laughing during the experience, especially without my mom there sometimes when I was trying on these dresses, for example. Like feeling guilty that I wasn't constantly thinking about her. And like, trust me, I was. I was thinking about her a lot. For example, with every dress I tried on, I so desperately wished to get her opinion, as I mentioned. I wanted to see how she would react, or my dad, same thing, but it's okay to give yourself permission to smile and to relax and embrace this super special moment in your life. And remember, these moments, God willing, the wedding works out, you might only get like, this is your shot at this, right? So keep that in mind and just be super present with it. I know I just mentioned this, but I'm going to say it again in a slightly different context here. Remember to breathe. As I mentioned on my own journey previously, I found myself really exceedingly emotional. I mean, I actually really couldn't get it together when I was trying on that dress that I had mentioned with my friend Emma and the consultant. And when they left the little room for a moment, like I had a hard time stopping myself, and I am not typically that person. So for me, I was like, whoa, I really need to acknowledge this. I need to let this out. I need to listen to this and understand that these emotions are coming up for a reason, right? And the thing is, I almost felt this pressure to kind of like get it together before Emma and the consultant got back, which I don't even know why when I look back on it. It's wasn't something I was embarrassed about, or maybe I was, honestly, and I just didn't want to admit that to myself. I was completely entitled to cry whenever and wherever the heck that I want to, and so are you. But guess what? I got my composure back for a minute, and then I lost it again in front of them. And at that point, I had zero shame in doing that. And they understood, because they were in a place where like, I can't imagine not having both of my parents here. Honey, it's okay. You let it out because this is difficult. So again, that's just more to my point of having good people around you. And honestly, at one point, like I started laughing through the tears because it was actually just so funny. And the fact that I just could not keep it together. And I was like a little bit of a mess and I really couldn't stop. And then they kind of started laughing, and it ended up being so beautiful. And I know my parents would have been laughing. So, we're going through stuff. Okay. And at the end of the day, sometimes these can end up in happy tears, right? It was relief and release, and it was something that I hadn't let out yet. This is grief, you guys, right? It can come in some very obvious moments, and in some moments, it can really surprise you with how much it hits you. But as I mentioned, these tears for me were acceptance and love, and knowing that my mom and dad were seeing all of this and putting their stamp of approval on it. So, dress or not, at whatever other moments you might feel overwhelmed in this process, take a step back Excuse yourself if you need to. I understand that. Everyone else will understand. Breathe in for 4 to 5 counts through your nose. Hold it a moment and then breathe out for 4 to 5 counts through your mouth. And do this as many times as you need to, but I would recommend at least 3 times through to really feel some good effects and all of that beautiful oxygen coming into your lungs. And I've kind of mentioned surrounding yourself with the right people. And I just want to bring up a couple things here that you might not have thought of or expected from this episode. But I think this is super important. And especially when understanding my story. And if you're in the same boat, you are not alone. I will just mention that I had very minimal family, really, at both weddings. One, because my family on both sides, frankly, just isn't that big. Two, virtually none of my mom's family could make it to either wedding. And I'll be really honest with you, that hurt really badly. Most of them did have a good or pretty quote unquote acceptable reason. Some of them, not so much. Or they just really didn't acknowledge our wedding. And what's worse, I have to confess, is this following thought crossed my mind. I thought, what if my mom had been alive? Would you have made more of an effort to come? Kind of a horrible feeling, right? I can't even say that was the grief talking. Maybe it was, but that was genuinely how I felt. I am not ashamed of that. It just was out of pain, really, that I said that and thought that rather. And it was really sad. And I am bummed that I let my mind go there. But I also had a moment where I was like, no, I'm entitled to feel that way, right? This is grief. This is some of the thoughts and things and feelings that we have to grapple with. Is there any truth to it? Who knows? Yeah, some people might have made more of an effort if my mom was here because they wanted to also see her. And maybe they're just like, well, Napa's expensive, can't make it all the way out to California. Sorry, Tara, it's not worth it. I mean, I'll never really know. But let me impart some wisdom that countless people said to me. And I'm sure you have heard it before too. The people that are meant to be there on your wedding day will be. Acknowledge and appreciate the people that are there. This really hit hard for me at times, truthfully. But remember that when you feel disappointed, remember that when people are acting maybe insensitively or being difficult or not responding, or they back out last minute, any of the above could happen. All you can do is handle it with grace, right? You can't force people to come. You can't sometimes take things personally, right? And that goes for family and that also goes for friends. And I just wanted to get this out there too, because again, we're talking here a lot about the deaths of a loved one, or if a loved one is not there because they have died. But I think this is really important to talk about friends or other people that are maybe just not that are alive, but not making it to your wedding for one reason or another. Quick story. I will just say I'm fortunate to have best friends that are like sisters that could accompany me to dress appointments and were just really there for me. And I was very lucky. And I absolutely hope that you have people like this in your corner as well. If not, start to think about that. If not for a wedding, just for your happiness, right? It's never too late to find your tribe. Like I have met some phenomenal people through the Losses Become Gains community that I am so grateful to be connected with. It just goes to show like you never know who could come into your life and change it for the better at any state. And some of my bridal party I had known for 9, 10 years. And some people I had just met literally like a year and a half before. And I love them all dearly for different reasons and, all the good things. So, that being said, I do want to share that I lost half my bridal party. So, you might be like, whoa, Tara, what? Like, how? So, again, this comes down to expectations and realizing that yes, our wedding is important, but other people have things going on too. So, little fun fact for you, I was originally supposed to have 6 bridesmaids. I ended up with 3 and 2 at the Italy wedding. So, let me just break down what happened in case you are curious about this or something like this is happening to you too, because this is absolutely another part of the process that you might have to cope with, again, other than just like people who have died that aren't there. You might be dealing with some very difficult people right now, or people that are kind of not showing up for you in the way that you had hoped. So, reason number one that a couple of them could not make it was they were too pregnant to travel by the time that the wedding rolled around. So, what am I going to do in that case, right? Force them into a car or force them to, one of them was in Florida. I can't force her to drive across the US at like 9 months pregnant. And another one was just finishing her graduate program and she really couldn't commit to it or afford it. And none of those people made it to the actual wedding either. And so that was a horrible pill to have to swallow. Like so many times. I was like, half my bridal party? Really? Like it felt so personal, you guys. But I eventually had to have this moment where I was like, Earth to Terra, 2 of them are bringing life into this world. And if the tables were turned, you would probably have to do the same thing. Like the timing was really unfortunate, but it happens. And they were really sad to miss it too. They were, it wasn't easy on them either. But I have to say, one of these moms did make it to my bachelorette in Vegas. She was like 6 months pregnant. So shout out to my girl Charlotte for that one. But listen, it took a lot of time. Like I actually had to mourn that, to be honest with you, because for years I had always envisioned all my girls around me and having this beautiful experience and the photos and all the girly things that we love. But that was not my journey. And it took a lot of time. But the happiness I felt for them at the end of the day would always trump the disappointment that I felt. And at the end of the day, it was all really temporary. And by the time the actual wedding day came around, I was like, I'm okay. I'm good. I'm just grateful for the people that are here. Reason number 2 that I had lost a bridesmaid was ultimately because of poor communication. I want to be nothing if not honest here in this podcast, but out of respect for this individual, I won't go into a ton of detail here. They had a lot going on in their life as well. But basically, at the end of the day, it came down to expectations just not aligning and very poor communication. We weren't hearing from her during very critical times in the wedding planning process. Or, for example, it was like days before a big event, like my bachelorette party. And we weren't hearing anything. Was constantly having to reach out to her. And frankly, it put even more stress on me because it was stressing out the other bridesmaids who were trying to plan things and get deposits and, all the things. And they were just really trying to be there for me. And I had to try and track her down for responses on multiple occasions, which just put me in this really awkward position, all the things. And it finally came to a head when 2 days before my husband, John, and I were supposed to literally leave for Italy for a week before our next ceremony, I found out that she wouldn't be coming. Whereas literally the week before, that was still the plan. I still thought she'd be there. And sadly, I didn't even find out that she wouldn't be coming from her. A family friend informed me. And it's one of those things that I have been trying to wrap my head around since. Not so much anymore. I've had to let a lot of it go. I came to realize I couldn't lose sleep over the actions of another person. I learned a lot in this situation, okay? To this day, I still don't have answers. To this day, I don't know why she bailed and couldn't tell me. I have no answers, really no closure. And yes, it hurts a lot. This process of grief, either through the death of a loved one or an ending relationship or frankly, friendship, whatever this looks like for you, teaches us nothing if not how to be patient and realize that life and the actions and choices of others are more of a reflection on them than they are of you. And that if someone wants to make you a priority and is willing to show you through action that they are willing to do that, that they will. And most importantly, I cannot stress this enough. I've said this, I'm sure, on social media or something before. You can't expect yourself from other people. That is what I was doing in this case. I assumed that a lot of this was pretty basic bridesmaid stuff, but I learned a big lesson here. I learned a lot about myself. I learned some things that I was like, wow, okay, I will make sure not to do that to somebody because I know how it's making me feel. And it doesn't make me feel good. And actions do speak louder than words, right? So I just always empower any listener here, any follower in my community to just know your worth and approach people with love and grace and understanding. Try your best not to hold on to any resentment. You guys, I held on to a lot of resentment for a really long time, but eventually I got to this phase in my life where I was like, you know what? This is not serving me. This is doing me more harm than good. And they're not really giving it a second thought. So it seems. Maybe they were, but we can't hold on to these things forever, right? So to begin wrapping this up a little bit, I want to close this topic in this episode today with some other ideas really quickly and some inspiration on how you can work your loved ones who died into your special day. So I've already talked about a few things with, the dances or things like that. But if you can't have the individual or individuals that you're missing there in person, why not find ways to make their presence feel known, right? So, one thing I definitely wanted to bring up was jewelry. So, maybe if your mom or grandmother or whoever it is has any special jewelry that you'd be proud to wear on that day, and it goes with your outfit. And this doesn't have to be anything fancy, right? It's just a really special way to make her feel like she's with you. And I love this tradition because it's something they touched, something they wore, something that was special to them. And maybe someone even before her wore it, if it's like an heirloom or something. But also, no pressure here if she maybe didn't have a lot of jewelry or wasn't a jewelry person. I also recommend trying to find something maybe on Etsy or another fun website that just reminds you of them, right? Maybe it incorporates their favorite stone or, something with a butterfly or a bird. Those are really big symbols of our loved ones visiting us. So I always love those. They're very feminine. They can go with a wedding. So for our wedding, I wore one of my mom's favorite bracelets that she had had for decades, a beautiful pair of earrings of hers that I always loved and are just super classic, and her wedding band. And let me tell you, I felt her energy all up around me for sure. Next is music. We talked about music and first dances and everything a little bit, but think about it. What song could you possibly work into your big day that could honor your loved one? And think about this more than just like first dances, right? Whether this is your processional, recessional, the first dance, bridal toss, grand entrance. I mean, the list is endless here, right? And as I mentioned previously, my mom was a diehard Aerosmith fan, and we actually discovered a vitamin string quartet song through the show Bridgerton. Always makes me laugh. And we found out they did this really amazing rendition of I Don't Want to Miss a Thing, as I mentioned, was like a song that is so her and is like my little song with her. And that was a song that we walked down the aisle to, and everyone loved it. I loved it. My husband loved it. Mom would have loved it. And, if you know the song or have seen the movie Armageddon, it can be a very emotional song. We just felt like it was such a beautiful way to acknowledge really both of my parents and how they truly would not want to miss a single part of this day. And I don't think they did. So, another one is flowers. Flowers are a really colorful, elegant way to work your loved one into your day. It's a subtle, or maybe not so subtle, depending on how many you have, tribute to your loved one that can really make you feel the presence all around you. And if this feels out of budget, trust me, I know how expensive flowers can be. It's absolute insanity. Don't worry, flowers can also be inexpensive. Maybe just work them into, one aspect of your wedding, or maybe just your bridal bouquet, whatever feels comfortable for you. I also just want to mention, I know so many people are against faux flowers. I have seen weddings where you can find some really high quality ones and they can be just as gorgeous and no one would know the difference, especially if they're not in like on the table, right? Where people could like possibly touch them or something like that. If they're maybe really just for decor, people would never know. In my case, my mom absolutely loved roses. She was like the rose queen. She has like china with them on it. And we would always catch her smelling them if we were on a walk and passed one. She took us to this rose garden several times that she loved. She used rose water every single day. You name it, she had it. So while roses can be very expensive, I know, we were really strategic about which kinds we used. We made sure that they were in season, and we were just very thoughtful and intentional with how many we used. So our color scheme was ivory, blush, champagne, with a little hint of sage, green, and gold. So we used a mixture of white and blush roses for the dinner tables, my bouquet, some of the bridesmaids' bouquets, and things like that. But to lessen the cost a little bit, we also use some olive branches and leaves sort of sporadically, very pretty leaves. I know that sounds sort of funny, but and just doing some design with some other greens and small votive candles to fill it all in a little bit. And we also used some of these flowers for our dessert tables. So we had this really amazingly talented woman who did our cake, and she added some white roses to the side just to kind of tie it all together. So it all came together beautifully and it didn't completely blow our budget. So in the end, it was exactly what we let's be real, because my husband probably couldn't have cared less about the flowers. It was exactly what I envisioned. And I want to bring up the dress one more time here, but actually where dads are concerned. And to honor my dad, you might have heard of people doing this before, but I had the seamstress who did alterations to my dress cut a small piece of one of my dad's work shirts, and she created a little heart from the pocket. And because she took it from the main pocket, we were able to keep the rest of the shirt intact. And then she sewed that little heart into my dress right under my heart in the bodice of the dress. It was so beautiful and so cool. And it helped me feel closer to him that way. And it also doubled as my something blue. And with that same shirt, my friend Emma, that I mentioned before, got my new initials with my new last name and our Italy wedding ceremony date monogrammed into it. So that is just something I have hanging in my closet now. I cherish it so deeply. Very last thing here to honor both of my parents. I have this photo from their wedding when they eloped in Key West, Florida back in 1981. It was just them two there. Literally, they didn't have anyone else. They just did this small little thing, just them two. It is a photo that I love and cherish so much. So I had that blown up and I framed it. And it was placed on the aisle chair in the very first row on sort of my side. I use that term loosely. I think everyone can join either side, right? That's what a wedding is. But theoretically, where they would have sat if they were there in person. And my bridal bouquet also sat there during the ceremony. So when the recessional began and my husband and I were officially husband and wife, I picked up the bouquet from the chair and I just made sure to take a second and really look at that photo and give them a little smile, which of course made me cry a little bit more. But at that point, it was tears of joy. I was walking down the aisle with this man that I could not have been happier to be with. And it was a beautiful moment. So, a final thought here. A loved one's absence on any given day can be deafening, right? Let's just call a spade on that one. You don't have to have a wedding for grief to be difficult. It is heartbreaking not having them here in physical form to be with you during this incredibly special time on the day leading up to it, and just the small and the big moments, period. Please know I see you right now if you're struggling with this. No matter if it's a parent figure or another special loved one that you're missing on your wedding day, do your best to remember that they are there with you. They would not miss this day for the world. Somehow they are watching everything you're doing. They are all up in your business and they are giving those opinions of theirs out there from the other side somewhere. I have zero doubt about that. And if your loved one is anything like my mom, I promise you they will be finding ways to nag you and insert their dominance, even from another realm. You just have to be open to hearing from them. And when in doubt, close your eyes, let the tears fall as they may, and tap into the energy around you because you might feel them more than you think. You might receive signs and symbols for them, or you might see angel numbers, right? Like double or triple or quadruple numbers. Put any questions or things that you need help with out into the universe and ask for guidance, right? See what comes back to you. I swear to God, you guys, I literally, with multiple things, I was like, my mom was like big on coins. She always found them here when she was alive. And she had even said to me once, I think randomly, like, if you're ever missing me, if you're ever needing me, like, I'm going to show up in the form of coins. So, and lo and behold, like, I swear to God, I find coins on the ground when I'm needing a little guidance or advice or a little nod from them, like, hey, we're here. It's all good. So open yourself up and pay attention to those things. And by working their memory into special aspects of your day, be it big or small, their presence and energy will be felt no matter what. They will be cheering you on from the very front of the crowd. I have no doubt they're going to have the best seat in the house, right? Remember that. No matter who isn't with you, there is no way that your loved ones who have died wouldn't want you to have fun with this experience. Okay. So if I can leave you with one final thought, it's this. There are no rules when it comes to making your wedding how you want it. Sure, there might be some traditions or things that you want to uphold or, you might feel are appropriate to do or not to do. That's fine. The best, most beautiful thing you can do is make the day about you and your partner. You guys, I had to remind myself of that so many times when people were disappointing me or hurting my feelings or I was missing my mom and dad. And I'm not going to lie, I lost sight of it a few times. But then I would look at my husband and I was like, he's the reason I'm doing this. That's right. So do what feels right and authentic to both of you. And if any naysayers come in with a negative attitude, show them the door. And by that, I mean have a nice, calm, rational conversation with them. Or if it's a snide comment or an opinion that you didn't ask for, take it in stride, let it roll off your back if it doesn't feel right to you. There's no time or energy that you need to put towards that. The wedding process can feel exhausting and daunting at times, while also feeling very exciting and special, but it truly does go by so quickly in the grand scheme of things. So I empower you and remind you to enjoy every single second. All right, my friend, I've done enough talking today. I really hope this episode was so helpful for you or even a friend today. So perhaps you're not the one getting married, or maybe you already have, or you will be. But if you have someone in your life that would appreciate this episode or could use hearing some of this, I would appreciate it so much if you shared it with them. I'm so grateful that you hung out with me today. I'm sending you so much love on your special day and everything leading up to it. You're going to be okay. It's going to be beautiful. And remember what your wedding is all about. I really hope you enjoyed this episode. If you did, please share your thoughts and rate how you are loving this podcast so far on whatever platform you're listening on. And I will talk to you soon. I am sending you a huge thank you for tuning into today's episode, my friend. I'm so grateful you're here and for the steps that you're taking to heal your heart, open your mind, fulfill your soul, to learn, grow, and evolve, and move through this crazy thing called life in big, beautiful, impactful ways. Visit lossesbecomegains.com for my blog and for more coping tools. Explore my Grief Becomes Gains online course if you need some extra grief support and coaching. And be sure you're following along on Instagram and Facebook at Losses Become Gains podcast. I love seeing new faces, meeting new people, hearing your story, and supporting you however I can. And remember to always keep asking yourself, how will I turn my losses into gains today? I'll catch you in the next episode.